Incoming transmission.
Welcome to the Outpost, and I'm the Outpost Nerd. How are y'all doing this evening? This is my first show, so I'm going to have to play it a little loose. So I'm going to be trying my best here, But tonight I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on what I believe has become a really, really good show. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Orville. We've been waiting for coming up on 3 years now for season 3 of the Orville. And I got to say, Seth MacFarlane, he's delivered. He's really showed how good he is at writing in general. We've seen him more in comedies over the years. But look at these scores on Rotten Tomatoes, of all places. I usually don't put too. We've seen the Orville go from pretty much a comedic spoof to a show that really stands on its own. It has its own bearings. It's what a lot of sci-fi should be. Good storytelling, amazing graphics, amazing visuals, and really, compared to other shows set in this kind of future, a lot of real human interaction. You don't see a lot of the crew as perfect beings that we've seen in the past on other shows. We see them as flawed individuals, each with their own demons, I guess you could say, that they need to overcome. But with this, I tend to, I was saying earlier, I tend to kind of focus more on the audience reviews than the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. So I think this is a pretty balanced review. I believe, the other 23% of people who did like the Orville, I think those are the people that were expecting more of the comedic continuance of the past 2 seasons, along with Seth MacFarlane's other projects, Family Guy, all American Dad, Ted, all his other movies. But we've seen a more, with Seth MacFarlane's character, Ed Mercer, we've seen him kind of harden since the last season. We've seen him kind of go from this he in the first 2 seasons, he didn't believe in himself. He was so neurotic, but now we've seen him grow really into the captain's chair. I think at the end of season 2 with the war with the Kalons, we saw him get to shine. We saw him really stand on his 2 feet and prove not just to others, but to himself that he really does have what it takes to. He deserves the captain's chair. And we had a captain who probably would have been involved more with the interactions with his crew, but now we're seeing kind of he knows when to fight, when to stand back, and especially when in season 1 or season 3 episode 1, we're seeing the ramifications with Isaac, staying on the ship after his people tried to exterminate all life. We've seen characters really harden towards him. He's dealing with what surmounts to racism, and it's a really good allegory for what's going on today, with one person being demonized for what a group does. And in this regard, we really see that with a new character who I hope we get to see a lot more of. Is a new character. She's the new navigator of the ship. Since Lamar went to engineering, we needed a new navigator on the bridge. And we got Charlie Burke, who was a survivor of the Battle of the Kalon and lost all her friends. Through the first episode, we really see kind of the dark side of the people, of the cast and characters. With Charlie, we see the racism. We see kind of the hatred for the other side during a war. And she sees Isaac as the cause of all her losing her friends. So throughout the episode, Isaac slowly comes to realize, is he being a hindrance to the crew, and should he stay? So the topic turns to something he commits suicide, and the only one that can save him is Charlie, due to special skills she has. We see her put her hatred aside in order to save a fellow member of the crew. And it shows how, yes, they still have the issues, that we have today, but they're a little more evolved. And I hope we get to see more of her, because I think that dynamic that we're seeing between the character, a lot of the crew, and Isaac is going to be very, very interesting. We're going to see them kind of dealing with his cold, logical look on the world compared to their human, emotional view. Well, one thing I really did like, one thing I think that season 3 has really gotten right, they've used the jump from Fox to Hulu and the more freedom they've had to create a lot more visually stunning look, and we're getting looks at new ships as well. And my favorite is the Union fighter. It's sleek. It's a one-man fighter that's very sleek and fast. And we get this amazing sequence in episode 1 of Gordon test flying it through a shipyard, a Union shipyard, and he's whizzing past other ships. He's just zigging and zagging. And Charlie sends these drone-like things after him to test the maneuverability, to test the fighter in a near combat situation. And of course, Gordon, being the amazing pilot he is, just blows him out of the air. And we're seeing them use the freedom, and we've seen them, why it took so long, why it took 3 years to get it. And it's worth the wait. This series has been worth the wait. Another thing we've got to see is a thing that the Orville has done really well over the years, over its 3 seasons, is aliens. They've utilized makeup a lot. Yes, we get still the 2-leg, 2-arm, bipedal humanoid aliens, but we get aliens like one of my personal favorite, Yaphet from season 1 and 2, played by the late great Norm Macdonald. I mean, who's just a big gelatinous blob, and we got to see how his form would yes, yeah, it's a Hulu exclusive now. It was on Fox, but as per tradition, Fox canceled a great show, and that's the reason it took 3 years for it to come back. It was because it spent, I think, the first year and a half trying to find a network to pick it up, and finally Hulu picked it up. And that change, one, allowed for more freedom in writing. You know, you're not restricted by censors so much. And I think they were able to get a bigger budget, so you got better aliens and visuals and ships. But one of my favorites, in episode 2, we have a new alien enemy called the Arachnids. We don't know much about them yet, but what we're seeing is the typical, the big spider alien. But this version is so well done, so much more well done than you see in old versions. These ones, they're climbing on walls, they're walking on all fours. What they are mutated, spoiler alert, mutated versions of the crew that came in contact with this alien spore. So that gives it a whole nother layer of frightfulness. In all honesty, you come across these monstrous aliens who basically reproduce by mutating you. And it's Cool Frog. It started out that way. It really did. But I believe, with season 3 so far, it's really grown out of being a parody. You can't say every spaceship show is a parody of Star Trek because, just because Star Trek did it first and the longest, I think. But it's really not that anymore. With the change to Hulu, they really kind of played down the comedy. It still has its funny moments, but a lot of the comedic elements are played down a lot. It's not so over the top anymore. Like, I don't think with the changes, one of my favorite characters, Lieutenant Malloy, Gordon, the pilot, he was always goofing around, joking, cracking jokes on the bridge. You don't really see that with him anymore in these first 3 episodes, at least. He's really, and you see he's really hardened due to the Kalon War, where they lost so many people. They lost millions of people in this war with these robots. And he even said to Charlie, he's like, use your anger. Don't, I don't want Isaac on the bridge either. And this was a character who was playing practical jokes on Isaac in season 1. He made him to look like a Mr. Potato Head in one episode. He would try to help Isaac understand humanity. And you don't see that anymore. You see a hardened, like Charlie, he believes that Isaac does not need to be on the bridge. And I think these are story elements that, as the season goes on, we're going to see more and more tensions rise, and we're probably going to find other characters on the show that are really going to surprise us that they feel this way about Isaac. Yeah, I really do believe it's standing on its own, Cool Frog. It's going to be a really good season, and I hope we get more. I really think this is showing off, as I said before, Seth MacFarlane's overall writing abilities. He's not just a comedic writer, which is pretty much all we've seen him in for 25 years almost, since the early 90s, when he was doing Johnny Bravo and all these Cartoon Network shows he wrote and drew on. But he's really, really shining through the Orville. It's a great show, and I hope we see more. We've this started out as, well, he still does. He does. He's actually, I found out recently, he's not the showrunner for Family Guy anymore. Since he started doing movies, since going all the way back to Ted, he's kind of he stepped down from being the showrunner. He still pretty much he does voices. That's pretty much all he said he does now. But we've seen him over, like I've said before, over the course of this season specifically, and it's just 3 episodes, we've seen a hardened, less what's the word I'm looking for? Less self-doubting and self-loathing version of Ed Mercer, the captain on the Orville, his character. We've seen him really stand up for what he thinks right, but also stand back, which I think is there was one episode, this recent episode has Ed and a away team on a planet disappear, and they decide that they're going to send another team down to the planet to find out what happens. Well, Isaac, as that cold, calculated computer that he is, voices his opinion that that's a waste. And Charlie goes on to just have such disdain for that idea. But during the argument, you see the command crew kind of stepping back and letting their officers discuss it. I mean, there was one moment during one episode where Charlie is literally going at it acute on the bridge. Now, this is it's like if you were working on the floor of a factory or something, your boss started arguing in front with you, or your coworker started arguing with you on the floor. And that's not the place to do it. But Ed would say he just stepped back, he listened to both point of views. Where I think him in season 1, or even halfway through season 2, before the Kalon attacked, you would have seen a Captain Mercer kind of play referee a little more. But I like where the characters are going. I like characters that you see in this future that are still human. They still have the same flaws that we do. In Star Trek, or the older Star Trek, I should say, you saw characters with pretty much this, utopia view on things, and they were able to keep their personal lives out of their work, which I think is pretty unrealistic, no matter how many hundreds of years. And you're still going to be human. You're still going to have emotions, and those emotions are going to still impact the way your work and how you interact with people. And we're seeing that in the Orville. So, I think this is pretty much one of the best shows on TV right now. It's very subtle in its messages. It hits hard topics. I mean, like I said, in the first episode, they were tackling suicide. In the second episode, they were dealing with cultures that reproduce in different ways than they do. And getting down on episode 3, I haven't touched too much on episode 3. I'm going to wait probably a week to touch on episode 3 because I want to give some people more amount of time. But I'm just going to say there's a throwback to one of the early episodes, I think in season 1, that's going to surprise a lot of people. But and with the Orville, you don't have to watch all the episodes to enjoy like I could watch episode 3 and enjoy it without watching episode 1 and 2. Now there are some moments in each episode where there's a little throwback, but it's not so much that you're lost as a new viewer. The overall story arcs could be standalone, but there's still a little bit of throwback to past episodes. But all in all, so far, I give the Orville maybe a A-. And hopefully, I'll be able to upgrade that grade in the coming weeks. But, I think this was a good show, I think, for my first show. Little hiccup, but that's country life, like I said, never know when the internet's going to or power is going to go out. And at my house, the power can go out on a sunny day if the wind is just right. So on that note, I'm going to be signing off and look forward to more transmissions from the Outpost Nerd. Later.